The fluorescent lights of the 24-hour diner flickered above Rachel's head as she gripped her coffee cup, so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had been sitting in the corner booth for 3 hours now, watching the door, her phone face down on the table, because she couldn't bear to see another message from him. The waitress had refilled her cup 4 times without asking questions, the kind of silent kindness that comes from seeing too many scared women seeking refuge in the safety of bright lights and other people. At the booth diagonal from hers sat a man with kind eyes and tired shoulders, cutting pancakes into small pieces for his daughter. The little girl couldn't have been more than 5, with wild curls pulled into lopsided pigtails and syrup already decorating her chin. Rachel found herself watching them, the gentle way he wiped her face, the patience in his voice when she knocked over her orange juice. It was the kind of ordinary moment that felt like a luxury to someone whose ordinary had been stolen away. That's when the door opened and Rachel's entire body went rigid. She recognized the stance before she even saw his face. Her ex-boyfriend Derek stood in the entrance, scanning the diner with the methodical precision of someone who had done this before. She had broken up with him 6 weeks ago after finding cameras hidden in her apartment. The restraining order was supposed to keep him away, but paper and ink meant nothing to a man who believed she belonged to him. Rachel's hands trembled as she grabbed her phone, trying to angle herself away from his line of sight. She was trapped. Her car was parked right outside where he could see it. If she tried to leave, he would follow. If she called the police, he would disappear before they arrived like he always did. And then he would be angry. So angry. The man with the daughter looked up at that exact moment, and something shifted in his expression. He had noticed Derek. He had noticed Rachel's fear. And in the space of a single heartbeat, he made a decision that would change everything. He stood up smoothly, leaving his daughter coloring on a placemat, and walked directly to Rachel's booth. Before she could process what was happening, he slid into the seat across from her with an easy smile that didn't match the alertness in his eyes. "I'm so sorry I'm late, honey," he said, his voice carrying just enough to be heard. Traffic was terrible. He reached across the table and gently placed his hand over hers. His wedding ring caught the light. Except Rachel knew it wasn't a wedding ring at all. It was too loose, worn on the wrong finger. This stranger was pretending to be her husband. Rachel's brain struggled to catch up, but some instinct deeper than thought made her play along. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "It's okay. I was just worried." The man squeezed her hand once, a silent message of reassurance, then turned his head slightly as if just noticing Derek's presence. He didn't stare, didn't challenge, just acknowledged and dismissed in the same casual glance a married man might give any stranger in a diner. The message was clear and territorial without being aggressive. "She's taken. She's protected. Move along." Derek's face cycled through confusion, rage, and calculation. He took 2 steps toward their booth and Rachel felt her lungs seize. But the stranger didn't flinch. He turned back to Rachel with practiced ease and started talking about their daughter, gesturing to the little girl in the other booth, who had looked up at the sound of her daddy's voice. "Sophie wants to know if you'll help her finish her coloring page," he said. "She's been waiting for you." The little girl, catching on with the supernatural intuition children sometimes have, waved enthusiastically at Rachel. "Hi, Mommy," she called out, and Rachel felt tears burn behind her eyes at the simple generosity of this child offering her own father as protection. Derek stood frozen for another moment, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. The waitress had stopped what she was doing, her hand hovering near the phone behind the counter. The cook had stepped into view through the kitchen window. Even in the middle of the night, witnesses were everywhere, and Derek was smart enough to know when the odds weren't in his favor. He turned and walked out, but not before glancing back once with a look that promised this wasn't over. The bell above the door chimed his exit, and Rachel finally remembered how to breathe. The stranger didn't move his hand right away. "You're okay," he said quietly. "His name's Derek Patterson. I heard you say it on the phone earlier when I was coming in. I called the police when I saw how scared you looked." "They're 2 minutes out." Rachel stared at him, this complete stranger who had been paying attention when it mattered. "Who are you?" He smiled, and it was wary but genuine. "I'm James Cooper. That's my daughter Sophie." He glanced toward his little girl who was now very seriously adding purple stars to her coloring page. "We know what it's like to be scared of someone who's supposed to love you." Sophie's mom had a boyfriend who thought hitting was the same as caring. "We've been on the run from him for 8 months now." The confession hung between them, heavy with shared understanding. Rachel felt something crack open in her chest, The isolation she'd been carrying finally finding company in someone else's truth. The police arrived exactly when James said they would. Rachel gave her statement while James kept Sophie distracted with a game of tic-tac-toe. The officers knew Derek's name. There were 3 other restraining orders from 3 other women. They promised increased patrols. They said all the things that were supposed to be comforting, but never quite were. When the police left, James walked Rachel to her car with Sophie holding her hand and chattering about her favorite cartoon. He waited until Rachel was safely inside with the doors locked before stepping back. "Thank you doesn't feel like enough," Rachel said through her open window. James shrugged. "My mom used to say we're all just walking each other home. Sometimes the path is scarier for some of us, and we need someone to walk beside us for a while." Rachel didn't drive away immediately. Instead, she found herself asking if they wanted to follow her to the safer diner across town, the one with the security cameras and the off-duty cop who worked as a bouncer on Friday nights. James smiled and agreed. That night turned into a friendship built on understanding what it meant to rebuild a life from broken pieces. James had been a high school English teacher before he became a full-time single father. Sophie had nightmares about the man who hurt her mother. Rachel started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, learning that her voice could be powerful when she used it to help others find theirs. 6 months later, Derek was arrested for violating restraining orders from multiple women. The evidence Rachel and the others provided ensured he would spend years in prison. Sophie started kindergarten and drew a picture of her family that included Rachel, labeled best friend. James got his teaching job back at a new school, one that valued his dedication to his daughter above arbitrary attendance policies. And Rachel stood in front of a room full of survivors at the shelter, sharing her story about a stranger in a diner who pretended to be her husband for 5 crucial minutes, reminding them all that rescue sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. "The path home isn't always safe," Rachel told them. "But if we watch out for each other, if we're brave enough to step in when someone needs us, we can make it safer. We can be the light in someone else's darkest moment." One small act of courage from a tired single dad and his generous daughter had created ripples that spread further than any of them could have imagined. James had taught Rachel that kindness wasn't weakness. Sophie had shown her that hope could live in small gestures. And Rachel had discovered that surviving wasn't the same as living, but with the right people walking beside you, you could learn to do both. Sometimes the family we need isn't the one we're born into. Sometimes it's the one that chooses us in a fluorescent, lit diner at 3 in the morning, offering protection without hesitation and friendship without conditions. Sometimes it's the stranger who sees you when you're invisible, who believes you when you're doubted, who stands beside you when you're alone. That's the kind of kindness that changes everything. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to Kindify Stories. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that there are still good people in the world. Still heroes who show up in ordinary moments. Still hope in the darkest hours. Your share might be exactly what someone needs to hear today. Together we can spread more kindness, more compassion, and more light. Thank you for being part of this community that believes in the power of human goodness.